Hi, my name is Sarah Elliott. I've been a program evaluator and a social worker for over 20 years. And I want to walk you through a template that EdaWorks developed to help you with creating a logic model for your program. So in the guide, there's an overview that's going to walk you through all the components of a logic model. So why would you want to create a logic model? It really does walk you through the logic, the thinking behind your program and all the different elements, and ultimately why it matters, why it's going to make a difference. So it is a way to visually represent your program as well and all the components on one sheet of paper or two sheets, which can be really helpful when you're going after funding or talking about your program, and even just getting clear with yourself and your team about what you're doing and how change is happening. So you want to start with identifying the need and the problem that you're trying to solve in a short statement. And that's your who, what, where, when, why framework for the program. Then you want to list anything that you need to perform the activities of your program. So this is all the facilities, the finances, the equipment, your staff or volunteers, partnering organizations. This list can help you with budgeting and help to show your funders everything that goes into running your program. Then you want to write out a list of your activities. It's pretty straightforward, just the major activities and services that your program provides. And then your outputs. So these are just the number of things that you produce or do as in the course of the program. And then your outcomes. This is where we start talking about change and how change happens in your program for your clients or your community program recipients. You want to think about what changes and also when it changes in the short term, in the medium term, and in the long term. And then that also helps you think through, what change is possible now, but also the lasting impact of your program. And then you can have a final statement or column of like how much you accomplished. This is concrete and measurable, and these are the goals or metrics that you're going to track to show that your program is making a difference. And there's a variety of different data sources that you can use. Interviews, questionnaires, observation. You might have a database or a spreadsheet that tracks your participation. If you are working with a health program, you might have clinical data or scientific data. In education, you might have test scores, those kinds of things. So a whole variety of different data sources that you can use in your logic model and for your evaluation plan. So here is the template. At the top, you'll see in the gold, the need or problem statement. You can type in there a couple sentences that show what the need is. And we give examples of the types of inputs. And so you could just use these titles to think through all the different components of your program. First, what's needed to run the program and perform the activities? What are those resources? What are the major activities that you're running? Could be events, trainings, workshops. Make sure to include evaluation because that does take time and is an activity of the program. And then the outputs in terms of number, duration, how many people are you serving, how many sessions or classes are you offering, how many resources are you providing? If you're a food bank, this could be a place to say, how many meals are you delivering and to how many people? How long is each session? And then with the outcomes column, you start to list out in the short term, what change is happening, in the midterm, what change is happening, and then in the long term. This really can vary the time frame based on the length of your program. A good sort of rule of thumb is short term can be 6 months to a year. So it's in that initial engagement in the program. What do you expect to change in the people who are participating? In the midterm, this might be for a shorter program, like as they graduate the program or a few months out after they graduate. For midterm changes, really focus on action or behavior. For the short-term changes, you're going to be thinking more about what skills are people developing, how are their attitudes changing, what knowledge are they gaining into change and behavior. So think first about what are the initial changes someone needs, and then how is that going to eventually lead to some change behavior? How is your program going to support that change? And ultimately, how is it going to be sustained after the program? So long term, we want to see changes in our community, changes in a population, changes in policy or structures. And so this is where you can be thinking about the long-term impact of your program, even beyond the length of your program. So we might want to see a transformed education system. Maybe your program works with a small group of individuals, of students to work on gaining access to STEM careers. But in the long term, maybe that your program inspires others to make changes in the educational system that can lead to higher graduation rates and entry into STEM careers for more students. So be thinking about long term. And then what are the next column? Start to put those in number form or statistics. What is increasing as a result of your program? So this is where you really want to have some numbers that show we went from here to there, and this is the increase or the change that's happening. Or a decrease if you're trying to change a community condition and reduce something like a poverty rate. And then data sources. Like I said, there's all different kinds of data sources that you can use, including demographic data from the community, if you know that that condition is going to change as a result of your program or you expect it to. And then here is an example of a logic model that we filled out for a hypothetical client. And it will give you some ideas of different ways of writing up the inputs, the activities, the outputs, which are number related, outcomes, indicators, and sources. This example shows short-term outcomes and long-term outcomes. It doesn't have the midterm. That's okay. It depends on what makes sense for your program. But in particular, the outputs column where you're really being really clear about this is what we're committing to, this is what we expect to happen, and how many people we might impact, how much we're going to deliver of a certain service. That's where you put the outputs. Outcomes is where you're, again, demonstrating change in individuals in particular, but also could be in communities or institutions. And then indicators, what are the statistics that are gonna, or metrics that you are going to be able to show that change. And lastly, data sources. So from here with the logic model, you can use this to, sometimes a funder would like to see a logic model as part of a grant application, but sometimes it's really for your organization to use to get clear on what you're doing, what impact you're having. And then you can use this to develop a more in-depth evaluation plan and make sure that you're not only running the program, but also showing that it makes a difference. So grant applications almost always require a work plan for your project. So we've also created a work plan template that can guide you through laying out the different objectives of your program and then how they're connected to certain activities, who's responsible, the timeline, the expected outcomes, and then how you're going to measure that you've met that objective. So I'm going to walk you through the template and then I'll come back and show you one example that we have provided for you. So the template offers you space to list objectives, and then you can list multiple activities for that objective. There's a space then for a second objective for your program. Often there's more than one objective. And again, you can list several activities and be specific about who's going to do them, when, and what's expected, and how you're going to measure it. And then there's another space for a third objective. It's pretty common to list, 3 to 4 to 5 objectives for a program that's fairly comprehensive. So that's the structure of this template. And I'll walk you through how I completed this for a hypothetical program. So usually when I think of writing an objective, I'm thinking like to do something. So the objective of this program is to engage high school students in STEAM, science, technology, education, arts, and mathematics focused project-based learning opportunities so that they are more likely to choose and qualify for high-paying careers. So it links the who we're engaging, what we're engaging them in, and then what the ultimate purpose of doing this, having this program is. Then we get specific about one of the activities. So I wrote a weekly after school STEAM program at a high need high school, and then got specific about who 45 ninth grade students will complete a 10-week project. The responsible staff is the program director. For the timeline, you can put in the dates. If you're asking for funding, you want to tell the funders when this is going to occur. And then the expected outcome. Now, it's a 10-week project, so we want to be realistic about what is possible to change in those 10 weeks. Again, outcomes are about changes that we see in the participants or in the community if it's a longer term program. But because this is a short term 10-week program, I wrote, as a result, participating students will increase their critical thinking skills and their knowledge of STEAM careers. So they're in the short term improving a skill, and they are increasing their knowledge. We don't yet know if, there's going to be a behavior change, if they're going to choose a STEAM career, or qualify for a high paying job. Those are all going to happen in the future. But in the short term, we're going to expose them to STEAM, engage them in some project-based learning, and it's fairly likely they're going to improve some skills, one of them being critical thinking, and increase some knowledge about STEAM careers. If you could also get more specific about, if they're focusing on environmental quality in their community, you could be specific about the knowledge that they're going to gain through that particular project. How we're going to measure those short-term outcomes is with a pre and post survey of the students' critical thinking skills and their STEAM career knowledge. And we can look to the field of STEAM education to find some surveys that fit, and that will help measure those particular skills or knowledge gained as a part of the program. You can continue if there's more activities that you're going to do. Maybe there's a follow-up workshop. So if they complete the 10 weeks, then they qualify to go on to a summer program or a summer employment program, which builds on the initial program. And that makes it even more likely they're going to be looking forward to their future career. So that's an overview of how you can use this work plan to scaffold and think through all the different objectives and activities, and then expected outcomes that your program is engaged in. It's up to you if you prefer to work on the logic model and lay it out there and then go to the work plan. But if you like to think about, the work, how you're going to get the work done, you could start with this template. So whatever works for you is perfectly fine. Thank you so much.